Well, hello everybody. The season is winding down as far as gardening goes here. We had our first frost this morning. This is October 14th. A very light frost, not what I would call a killing frost, but I looked out the window and thought that's what I was seeing on the grass, so I went out and checked, and yes, there was some frost on the grass, so it has begun. Supposed to warm up now, I guess, for the rest of the week, so it'll probably be a while yet before we get that killing frost, but nevertheless, the season is just about to end. In this video, I do a little bit of harvesting outside, just when I dug over that bed that had the squash in it, and what I found there. I have picked my tomatillos, and towards the end of the video here, I make my very first batch of salsa verde, green salsa, from a recipe that I found online, and it turned out pretty good. I don't know if I will grow tomatillos again, but at least I found a use for them, and it seems to be working out quite nicely. Also, look around inside the hoopos, and saving or trying to save the artichoke seeds. Well, you'll see what I mean in a minute here, but I'm not sure that I got viable seeds. But anyway, I'm drying them, going to save them, and this winter I'll find out if I can get some of them to germinate. Anyway, have a little look at what follows here. Well, it's October 10th. We haven't had any frost, so it hasn't got that cold in here in the hoopos to damage anything. And that's the artichoke, which is still looking quite healthy. And this sad looking thing here is the what's left of the blossom, so I'm just about to cut it off and have a look inside to see whether or not I have any seed to save. Well, let's find out what's in this thing. Well, in the wild, it would be like a thistle blossom. Any thistle blossom, this down would blow away with a seed attached. But remembering back to the seeds that I received, that I started this from, I don't think there's anything there that's large enough to be a viable seed. So I don't know if it required cross-pollination. I know there were bees on it at one point. Those could be seeds, but they seem pretty thin to me. I'll spread some of this stuff out and let it dry and see whether or not I think there's anything worth saving, but I don't think that particularly worked all that well. Well, as I said at the beginning of the video, this is now October 14th, so that's 4 days after I took the flower head off of the artichoke. And as you can see, it has really fluffed up and turned into those things that would fly around in the air if it was outside in a breeze. I'm going to bag some of it up, and I'll keep it in the house. I'll probably leave the bag top open for a while so it will continue to dry out. But later this winter I'll give it a try and see whether or not there's any viable seeds there. It is just like the thistledown that you see flying around in the air, so maybe those tiny little seeds are viable. Time will tell. The cabbages are doing very well. I'm very pleased with them. I think there were 6. I've already eaten one, and one that I ate was one of the ones that was planted in the spring. Didn't do anything in here in the heat all summer, but started to hit up in the fall. But what you're looking at here were planted mid-July, and they've got nice big heads on them. If I get down there to give you an idea. Really firming up nicely. I'll have to put the plant list below this video again to give you the varieties. I can never remember them off the top of my head. A little look down the hoopos here. The grapevine in the back there, as you can see, is turning gold and brown, and some of its leaves have already dropped. Soon I think it will be all on the ground. And in the foreground are some of the peppers that are still doing quite nicely. I've been using peppers almost every day now the past week or two. Both the bell peppers and the Hungarian hot wax, which in my opinion have very little heat. They're a nice little pepper, but I won't make the mistake of growing them again because I was looking for a hot pepper. Well, I guess I already said it's October 10th. I've been waiting for frost to kill back the squash vines, and so far no frost. Last year it was October 13th when we got our first frost, but I looked at the sort of long-range forecast this morning, and for the next week to 10 days it doesn't look like there will be any frost. And of course our weather here is very changeable. We could still get frost, but I want to add a layer of the dressing out of the chicken coop with the manure and shavings and whatever to this bed before winter, and I wanted to get the soil turned over, so I have turned that area over, and I'm leaving this bit down here. I cut the chard back a week, 10 days ago, and it started growing back up again. So if we don't get a heavy frost in the next week or two, it looks like I might get another meal or two out of there, so I haven't turned that over. I'll give you a little look at the extra things that I just harvested as I've been digging and pulling out vines. I found 4 more of the winter squash. The Sweet Mama, I think, is the variety. As I say, I'm going to put the plant list again down below here so you can double check that. 2 of them are a good size, and I'll just add those to the bench in the hoopos to harden off. And the 2 smaller ones, I don't think they've developed enough that they will harden off. I think they'd probably spoil, so I'll eat those almost immediately. A bit disappointed that I didn't find very many more potatoes. Perhaps there are more under where the chard is. Time will tell. There's 3 more zucchini. Hen size, I guess. Those will go to the chickens. And those are the tomatillos, which I really don't know what to do with yet, but I have picked that many. I can make a small batch of some kind of salsa. I guess I've got to get online and see what I can find. I'll give you an idea of what they look like here. When they get that size, they're filling the pod. They're ready to pick, I guess. Don't know much about them. I've never grown them before. Any I've ever seen in stores are green, so I don't think they turn any other color, or think they're used when they're green anyway. So now I've got to go look up a recipe and see what I think of tomatillos. Time to bring the herbs in, or at least some of the herbs in, before it gets cold enough that the frost damages or kills them outside. The one on the far left is rosemary, and I started that particular plant from seed early last spring, late last winter, whatever. In the center is bay leaf laurel bay leaf. I don't know, maybe that's about 4 years old, I think. I bought it as a rooted cutting in a little 4-inch pot from my favorite herb supplier there, the one that I got the comfrey from as well. I must remember to prune the growing ends off of that so that it will be bushier next year rather than continuing to grow high. And to the right is sage, and that's the same sage plant that I grew in the hydroponic system, the Arrow garden, last winter. It's looking a little tall and spindly and leggy because I planted it beneath the bean tower, and as you probably have seen some of my other videos, the bean tower was quite successful. Still has beans on it actually, but it didn't get full sunlight in there, so it grew a bit on the leggy side, but seems to have survived the transplanting into that terracotta pot and will remain in the house to be used this winter. I have a couple of more planted in the ground in the hoop house, which I'm quite sure will overwinter. Sage quite often overwinters here outside, even as long as it has decent snow cover or whatever. So anyway, I want that to use this winter. I've been online and found a simple recipe for a Tomatillo Salsa Verde, green salsa. Even has cilantro in it, unfortunately, which I have never particularly liked, but I bought a bunch of cilantro to add to it. First thing that you do is remove them, of course, from their husk, and then you have to rinse them off. I was surprised removing them from the husk that they are sticky. The whole surface of them is almost like it's been dipped in honey or something. They're sticky. And then you cut them in half, and they go on a foil-lined baking tray under the broiler until they are mostly blackened, or quite a few of them are blackened. So that is step one here. They've been under the broiler for, I don't know, 7 or 8 minutes, I guess. I didn't really time it. But there was photographs that came along with the thing on the internet, and that's sort of what they looked like. They weren't all blackened, just some of them. Seems to be the ones that were more directly under the flame. I have a gas broiler. Anyway, move on now to the next part of the process. You can see I'm using a blender and hoping it's large enough. The tomatillos have the 1.5 pounds of, I guess you'd have to call them cooked now. They're very soft. Tomatillos are in the blender. A 1/2 cup of white onion, just coarsely diced because it's going to be blended. A 1/2 cup of the dreaded cilantro. Get this pushed down in there, and 2 jalapeno peppers. And I left about 1/4 of the seeds in and discarded 3/4 of the seeds. Trying to get a little heat and not wanting too much heat, I guess. The juice of 1/2 a lime. Half teaspoon of sugar. 1/2 teaspoon of salt, which you can adjust later to your taste, I guess. Since those things are still hot a bit, I'm going to hold the cover on with a towel here in case we get some splashback. Well, that's it. Now to put it in a bowl and refrigerate it for a couple of hours until it's thoroughly chilled, and we'll give it a try and see what I think of it. Well, if you can see some little red flecks in there, it's because I've already tried this and I didn't find it hot enough. I should have added all of the jalapeno seeds, I guess. But I've diced up some Thai chilies, the bird's eye chili, and added that to get additional heat. I can still taste a little bit of the cilantro. It's not that bad, I guess. I know everybody else likes cilantro except me, but I can't really go it. I do like it though, it's quite nice. I don't know how I'll grow tomatillos again, but I'm glad I grew them at least once to give it a try.